So, as millennials get older, society changes. Now, society is in a consistent state of change at all times, but as millennials and with the development of new technologies, the format of society is changing. The way that society is established is changing. We're making room for YouTubers, Instagram stars, and the Twitter famous when previously these social media tycoons were not a part of our society in any way, shape, or form. We advance with technology, and so does status quo. And I know what some of you may be thinking. How can people who can't even afford diamonds or houses really enact social change? But anyone can enact social change, whether it's through a meme or an op-ed piece in the New York Times. Change doesn't have an age, though the age of technology is changing and progressing. Now, what really is the status quo? It's the existing state of affairs regarding social and political issues. And how does it define us? It defines what we buy, if yoga pants are really a dead trend, and what slang we use. And to really answer why we follow it, we need to evaluate it further. We want things to be familiar. We find comfort in fitting in. Humans are pack animals, and everything that we do is related to how we interact with the pack as a whole. People are scared of change, and it is far easier to just adapt to the way things are versus adapting to the way new things will be. And we are conditioned to follow rules. When you're born, you're either indoctrinated into a religion that your parents believe in, and that tells you what rules to follow, or your parents tell you what rules to follow themselves. Like, don't steal, don't hurt people, don't murder. These are all things that we all acknowledge to be true. Society then has its own set of rules that we follow, because we were raised by our parents and our peers and our teachers and by every authority figure we know to follow these rules. We value ourselves through how we align with this social norm. We're taught that as we follow society's rules, we are seen as more valuable. To be productive, it is true to some degree, but we value normal people more than we value the people that go against that social norm. But how can you really quantify social value? To start, we need to define a social uniform, and that is a generally accepted way to appear or talk. At Suffern, for girls at least, it's yoga pants, Uggs, and any form of Adidas. If you don't dress in the social uniform, people ignore you, or you find similar friends and then effectively create your own status quo in which you judge other people who don't dress the way that you do. We all have our own social uniforms. Like with me and my friends, if you don't wear Vans, what are you doing? If you're in the mainstream sports crowd, you don't have those white and black Adidas superstars, what are you doing? We all have our own little umbrellas. We have our own little bubbles of the way that we live and view things. We are superficial creatures in every way, shape, and form. We judge everything. For clothing, it's your overall aesthetic, whether your colors match, whether you're dressing with celebrity trends, and even how much makeup you're wearing. For social media, our judgment is displayed by a follower count. Everything matters, your theme, your content, and even the captions underneath your pictures that determine your social worth. The grass is always greener on the other side, and everybody always wants to be someone else. We use the extraordinary lives of celebrities to outline how we live our normal, everyday lives. We create an umbrella of social norms for people to follow, and people outside those umbrellas are ignored again until they become a titan themselves. The modern status quo is the power struggle between the social haves and have-nots. Now, we have a social pyramid in our modern society. And with the incorporation of social media, that social pyramid is shifting. Firstly, we have our social dissidents, our social deviants. Then we have our normal or mainstream people. And then finally, our influencers. It's more likely for a social dissident to become an influencer, and it is far less likely for a follower to become a leader. But what happens to social deviants? They really have two options. You're either forgotten by future generations, or you're remembered for years to come. But is it more valuable for everyday people to be socially deviant versus another sheep in the crowd? Everyone who doesn't follow the norm has those two options. Your differences and ideas can become the new normal of the modern status quo, or you could be forgotten. We remember names like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nikola Tesla, but we forget many activists and inventors that did not create significant change where their change has been forgotten. Immortality truly is change. Social deviants are often silenced by the mainstream population. With the creation of safe spaces, they've been able to either talk without being questioned by their ideas, or the inability to be critiqued or improved in order to enact the change they want so badly to happen. People shut down things they don't like. They shut down change. If we look back in history, there is always a precedent for leaders and the followers to shut down the people that differ from the ideas that they believe in or hold dear to themselves, not just because it's what isn't right. It could be right. It could be what society needs. But because that isn't the chosen way, that is not the way it's been for centuries, that is not the change that people will allow. Then we have free speech versus hate speech. People often mistake offensive speech for hate speech, as Stefan mentioned in his talk. Anything off the beaten path can be shut down, easily calling it hate speech when it could just be something that somebody else finds offensive. Like, let's say, somebody who's secular says, I think churches should be taxed. I think that it would cut down on national debt. But then somebody who is very religious could immediately yell at them, saying that's hate speech. That's going against my religion and what I believe in. We have these blurred lines between what is offensive and what is hate speech, and we use that as an excuse to shut down things that could improve society and improve our country. Then we have social persecution. The courts of our system do not determine whether somebody can be productive in society anymore. It's the way that society perceives somebody that determines how productive they can be. In the world of Twitter social justice warriors and PC paladins, the people are silenced. Some of this is absolutely necessary to shut down the uneducated, pushing bigoted and damaging beliefs, but where is that line drawn? If someone says something that is seen as wrong by anyone, they can lose their livelihoods through social persecution. A barrage of tweets can make somebody lose their job. Now that we've explored the social pyramid and uniform, let's take a look at social value. Think of it as kind of a version of influence points. You get points for doing certain things, and how do you find them? What are they? They're how well you adhere to the status quo, the monetary status that you have, the influence that you have on society. To get more, you have to change for society, or normalize your differences, or enact substantial change, or amass wealth. And who has the most? These are people I like to call titans. I've thrown around the word titan a lot. It's something that is an influencer, or a change bringer, or somebody that has an effect on our everyday lives that is seen as a figurehead in society. Now, the Titan complex is what I use to evaluate the different types of these. So firstly, we have the celebrity. The masses look up to them and follow them. People look up to them for everything, whether it's clothes, makeup, trends, music, and usually any political chat is ignored. Then we have the social media famous. They influence the purchases and styles of their followers. This is another new thing that millennials have brought to the social structure. And with this new thing, they could be considered a celebrity, but their influence is often greater. Because when you think of a celebrity, Usually you think of their one aspect of performance or their one aspect of influence. But when somebody becomes social media famous, whether it's Instagram or YouTube, they have more platforms than what they initially got. Because not only do they have the pictures that they post or the videos that they post, they can use cross-platforms and everyone will look. They have the captions of their pictures. They do have the same relatively limited sphere of influence as celebrities have them. Then we have our world leaders. Their influence is rather self-explanatory. They're at the top. They can't really influence social change, but more political change and world context change. Then we have our CEOs. They have power over our money. And then we have the affluent, who can really fit into any of the above categories. They have the silver spoon in their mouths from the minute they're born. They have money, they have connections. And then, undoubtedly the most powerful that can eventually fit into any of them, we have our social deviant to famous, with the most powerful thing, I believe, the power to enact substantial social change. But some argue that some change should be denied. If there is a risk of society reverting back to outdated ways that could be damaging to progression or damaging to the overall well-being of the public, should that change be denied? But if the change is popular enough to be adopted by the general population of the world, should that change then not be encouraged? At what point do we say it's more valuable to be socially deviant than it is to value the things that are important to us? We also need to keep in mind that some social change may be fighting for us to roll back scientific advancements or ignore them altogether, which is very damaging. People can ignore the scientific beliefs and accomplishments that we've had to further their illogical beliefs that aren't founded on any peer-reviewed science, or ignoring new products or ideas to keep an old one alive. And shedding archaic structure, some find this threatening to their worlds, but it can also be argued that shedding archaic structure can lead to new progression. Shifts in adopted morals and philosophies could lead to shedding in an archaic structure, or it could lead to the reversion of society. Ideas are the most dangerous weapons that a person can really have, and pushing those ideas into a real social change can be equally as dangerous. Now, who is to judge what change is really just or necessary? The individual cannot be the judge, jury, and executioner for the entire world's population. We cannot limit anyone else's free speech because we don't like the change that is occurring. Now, I'd like to think that we should all be a little more socially deviant. While it could be valuable to follow society in some suits, I believe it is much more valuable to have the potential to enact change in our society for the better, whether it's social or technological. Thank you.